Have you ever wondered where the hearty beef and ale stew originated from? Let's dive deep into the simmering pot of history to uncover the secrets of this traditional dish. Stews in general have been a part of human diet for as long as we've had pots to cook in, but the tale of beef and ale stew is steeped in the medieval times of Europe. It was a time when hearty, nutritious meals were needed to fuel the hard-working populace. This stew, brimming with tender beef, root vegetables, and a generous pour of ale, fit the bill perfectly. The concept of a stew, a dish cooked slowly over low heat, is as old as the discovery of fire. But our protagonist, the beef and ale stew, was born out of necessity and innovation. In the chilly climes of medieval Europe, the common folk needed a dish that was both filling and economical. Enter beef and ale stew. The beef in the stew came from cattle, a common livestock in medieval Europe. The ale was not just a clever addition for flavor, but also a practical one. You see, ale was safer to drink than water in those times, due to the water often being contaminated. The earthy root vegetables were harvested from the humble gardens of the common folks. All these ingredients simmered together over a slow fire, resulted in a delicious, hearty stew that warmed the body and soul. Not only did the beef and ale stew provide sustenance, but it also offered a sense of comfort and community. Imagine a large pot of stew bubbling away at the hearth, the aroma wafting through the entire house, inviting everyone to partake in the meal. It was a dish that brought families and communities together, fostering a sense of togetherness. So, the humble beef and ale stew has its roots in the kitchens of medieval Europe. A dish born out of necessity, it has stood the test of time, continuing to warm our hearts and fill our bellies even today. Do you know how the beef and ale stew was born out of necessity? In the Middle Ages, food was often scarce, and people had to make do with what they had. This was a time when nothing could be wasted, and every scrap of food was precious. The concept of leftovers, as we know it today, simply did not exist. Instead, they became the foundation for the next meal. This was the humble beginning of the hearty beef and ale stew. In the chilly winters of medieval Europe, warmth was a luxury. The hearths of homes were constantly kept alight, serving both as a source of heat and a means to prepare food. It was here, over these open fires, that the magic of the stew began. Leftover bread, often stale and hard, was tossed into a large pot. To this, scraps of meat, often beef, were added. These were not prime cuts, but the bits often overlooked. The tough and sinewy pieces that required hours of slow cooking to break down. Vegetables too found their way into this pot. Root vegetables, like turnips and parsnips, were a common sight. They were hardy, able to withstand the harsh winters, and added much-needed bulk and nutrition to the stew. The star ingredient, however, was ale. Ale was a staple in the medieval diet. It was safer to drink than water, and it was brewed in abundance. When added to the stew, it not only imparted a distinct flavor but also helped to tenderize the tough cuts of meat and meld the flavors together. Over time, this pot of leftovers transformed. The bread thickened the brew, the meat became tender, and the vegetables softened. The ale, simmering away, enriched the stew with a hearty depth of flavor. And so, out of scarcity, a rich and filling meal was born. It was a dish that warmed the body and the soul, a testament to the resourcefulness of the people of the time. Thus, a simple dish was born out of necessity and resourcefulness. Ever thought about how the beef and ale stew evolved over the centuries? It's a journey worth exploring, a culinary tale that's as rich and complex as the stew itself. Let's delve into this hearty dish's evolution, from the Middle Ages through to the present day. In the early medieval period, the stew was a practical solution to feeding many mouths. Meat, usually the tougher cuts, was slow cooked, with whatever vegetables were on hand, and a generous portion of ale, making it a nourishing, filling meal. The ale not only added flavor but also acted as a tenderizer for the meat. This simple, rustic recipe was born out of necessity, a way to extract maximum nutrition from minimal resources. As we move forward in time, we see the emergence of regional variations. In the British Isles, for instance, the addition of herbs such as thyme and rosemary became popular. These herbs not only enhanced the flavor but also had medicinal properties. Similarly, in the colder northern regions of Europe, root vegetables like parsnips and turnips were added to the mix, making the stew even heartier. Fast forward to the late Middle Ages, a time of culinary exploration and innovation. Here we see the introduction of exotic spices from the East, such as cloves and nutmeg, into the stew. This was a sign of wealth and status, as only the rich could afford these precious spices. In the modern era, the stew has retained its basic elements but has been refined and elevated. It's no longer just a peasant dish, but a comfort food loved by all. Today, chefs use high-quality cuts of beef, craft ales, and a variety of vegetables to create a depth of flavor. The beef and ale stew has become a delicacy, served in high-end restaurants and home kitchens alike. The beef and ale stew, once a simple dish of necessity, has evolved into a delicacy enjoyed by many. A testament to how food can evolve over time, adapting to changing tastes and influences, yet still retaining its core essence. What does the beef and ale stew represent in our culture today? A question that takes us on a journey through time, back to the age of castles and knights, where the stew first simmered over medieval hearths. In the cultural tapestry of Europe, beef and ale stew has been woven in as a thread of comfort and hospitality. Its roots dig deep into the heart of community living, where the hearth was a gathering place and meals were shared with laughter and stories. This dish, slow-cooked to perfection with root vegetables and a hearty helping of ale, became a symbol of warmth in the chill of European winters. From the frost-kissed landscapes of the north to the sun-drenched vineyards of the south, the stew has found a cherished place in European homes. The aroma of the simmering stew became synonymous with the welcoming embrace of home, the promise of a hot, hearty meal after a long day of toil. Beef and ale stew also found its rhythm in the ebb and flow of the seasons, becoming a fixture in festive occasions. As leaves turned golden and the air grew crisp with the arrival of autumn, the stew would be bubbling away on hearths, marking the commencement of the harvest season. It was a dish that celebrated abundance, shared in gratitude with family and friends. Interestingly, this humble stew transcended the barriers of class. From the nobleman's table to the commoner's hearth, it was enjoyed by all, creating a sense of shared experience and camaraderie. The beef and ale stew, in its simplicity, embodied the essence of community spirit, of shared sustenance, and the warmth of togetherness. So, the beef and ale stew is not just a dish, but a symbol of warmth, comfort, and hospitality. It is a culinary testament to the enduring spirit of community and shared joy that is at the heart of European culture. It is more than just a recipe passed down through generations. It is a tradition, a celebration, and a warm embrace, all stirred together in one pot. So, the beef and ale stew is not just a dish, but a symbol of warmth, comfort, and hospitality. Isn't it fascinating how a simple dish tells a rich history and cultural story? As we've discovered, the beef and ale stew is no ordinary meal. Its roots reach deep into the heart of medieval Europe, where it began as a hearty, slow-cooked meal prepared by hard-working folk. Over the centuries, this humble stew has evolved, but it has always remained a beloved dish that warms the soul and fills the belly. From its birth in the rustic kitchens of medieval serfs, the beef and ale stew has journeyed through time and across borders. Its recipe has been refined, tweaked, and personalized, embodying the spirit of culinary creativity. It's been a staple at grand banquets, a comforting meal for weary travelers at inns, and a beloved family dish served on cold winter nights. The evolution of the beef and ale stew is a testament to how food, much like language, adapts and evolves with time and place. Every spoonful of this hearty stew is a tribute to the resilience and resourcefulness of our ancestors, who turned simple ingredients into a meal that has stood the test of time. This gastronomic journey we've taken together is more than just an exploration of a dish's history. It's a celebration of our shared culinary heritage and the enduring power of food to connect us to our past. Now, we'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the beef and ale stew? Have you tried making it at home? Do you have a unique variation of this dish that you'd like to share? We're eager to hear your stories and experiences. If you enjoyed this gastronomic journey, do give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and let's continue the conversation about the beef and ale stew in the comments section. Until next time, keep exploring the fascinating world of food.